Marketer of the Day, number 507. Build a business on purpose and develop a systems mindset. Vision, mission, values, goal setting, and meetings with Scott Beebe. Hey everyone, we're so glad that you're listening in. We're talking right now with Scott Beebe, and Scott is the founder and head coach of mybusinessonpurpose.com, and he's the host of the Business on Purpose podcast. And Scott and the BOP team liberate small business owners from the chaos of working in their business and help them get their lives back by articulating and implementing intentional vision, mission, and values, systems, and processes. So Scott, glad to be having this conversation with you.
Robert, I'm pumped, man.
Awesome. Well, me too. I'm excited to jump in. So what's on your mind these days?
There's loads on my mind. Right now, at the time of this recording, I'm actually sitting in one of my favorite places. I don't live in Nigeria, but that's where I'm at right now. So in sub-Saharan West Africa, we've got some dear friends here. And what we get to do every single day, what drives us, what makes Monday my favorite day of the week, which is liberating small business owners from their chaos. We're actually here for a week in Nigeria, getting to serve alongside some really heroic leaders of non-governmental, faith-based non-governmental organizations, and we're getting to lead them through vision, mission, values, systems, processes as well. So this is such a delight for us to be able to do this, and it's amazing to come back, Robert, every time and to see the fruit of that work and how they're serving kids over here. So that's really, honestly, what's occupying my time right now.
Well, great. So what brought you over to Nigeria in the first place?
About, I would say 12 years ago, I had a conversation with a friend, a new friend who was a Nigerian guy. And we had been, as a family and also as a church that we had planned, we've been looking for somewhere around the world globally to begin leveraging the skill sets that we had, which were real narrow skill set, to the value and to the benefit of maybe some people who could never pay us back. And I got connected with my friend Ejike Akpa in Dallas. He and I went to lunch. He introduced me to the country of Nigeria, this incredible country, the most populous country on the African continent, the 8th largest Islamic country in the world. It's just got so many different attributes. It's got a city, Lagos, of 21 million people. It's a diverse place. It is an incredibly entrepreneurial place, and we have not looked back since. We've been coming here multiple times every year.
Well, great. So you mentioned that you were able to take the narrow skill set that you have and apply it to helping other people in a lot of different interesting ways. So what is that skill set exactly? What does that look like?
So under the umbrella that I mentioned earlier, Robert, that we serve heroic small business owners and we help them be liberated from the chaos of working in their business. And that's really what we spend our days doing. Now, the technical how of that, the nuts and bolts, is what we call for business freedom. And each one of those steps are very pragmatic, very laborious, very tactical steps to help these heroic small business owners, whether they're running a business of $300,000 a year or $1.7 million a year or $6 million a year or $22 million a year. It helps them get out of the chaos that they feel like they're in, step by step by step. For instance, we'll start every heroic small business owner off with what we call developing the vision story. Now, this isn't just a vision statement or vision paragraph. This is actually a 2 to 6 page document with a detailed layout of exactly what they see in their business X number of months or years from now. And so we start there, then we take them through the process, through all that first step of delegation, setting up their bank account structure appropriately in bookkeeping, team meetings, process layout, weekly schedule. And then once they're there, we take them to the second step where we talk about values and organizational structure, job roles, goal setting strategy so that they can get there, level 2 dashboards, et cetera. So we're hitting on every major element that should be in a business. But a lot of times, Robert, as you well know, because you talk to so many heroic small business owners, we find out that they'll start with a product, they'll jump straight into marketing, and then they'll get it 3 months or 9 months or 15 months down the road and go, oh my gosh, I've got a product, but I don't have a business. And so we come in on the back end and help them restructure the business so that it begins to run without them having to necessarily be there all day, every day.
Awesome. And I can definitely relate to that problem that you outlined there in maybe chasing our own tail and jumping in without a plan and always just working super hard for not a lot of money sometimes and thinking like there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to, delegate, outsource, and just be the person that steers the ship and gives the strategy and says who does what, as opposed to being in worker mode. And so one thing I'm curious about, about this process here that you mentioned is there an appropriate time to do it? Like, should people be making a business that's making money first and then clean up the mess? Should they jump into it with the organization and the structure already in place? Does it matter? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the answer is yesterday. When's the appropriate time? The appropriate time is yesterday. Now, the way you go about doing it differs depending on what stage you're in. So if you're what some people laughingly call pre-revenue, right? You don't have a business set up yet, no products being sold. You can only structure to the best that your mind will take you and what you've experientially seen, or maybe what some wise advisors have told you about. Is it wrong to do it? Absolutely not. Any planning will trump no planning at all, as long as implementation is a part of it. So implementation is the key, not necessarily planning. But once heroic small business owners have begun to implement, now they realize, oh my gosh, I've got plenty of implementation, but I have no plan. So I'm scattered. There's a great proverb, Robert. It says, where there is no vision, people scatter. And so it's true. Where there is no vision, where there's no structure towards that vision, the destination, not only do people scatter, but the business owners themselves begin to scatter. And so depending on what stage you're in, many of the businesses we work with are a year, 3 years, 5 years in, and they're so chaotic. They're constantly putting out fires, constantly throwing Hail Marys, hoping for the best. And they come back, and we have to kind of make them within midstream. While the car's moving 70 miles down the highway, we structure the business at that point.
So when you fix those things in midstream, do you encounter any resistance from people who maybe are used to things being the same old way, or are there difficulties that happen with getting them to see the light?
The resistance that you talk about, Robert, is actually proof that what they're doing is absolutely correct. And so we look for resistance. We actually welcome the resistance, because the resistance proves that in fact they were in chaos, and now it also proves that they're beginning to walk uphill. If they weren't facing resistance, then I'm not convinced that they would be doing the right work. But as soon as resistance begins to rear its productive head, then we know we're walking uphill, and uphill is where we need to go in order to create a business to where they've stopped working in it and they're spending time working on it, so that they can create time for really what matters most for them and their family.
Well, great. And so you're at the point now where you can help all these businesses, do the right thing. And have you always had it together? Did you yourself have to go through this transition process?
Yes, I came out of the womb, Robert, having it all together. No, absolutely not, man. This is one of those things. Now, I will tell you, our business today, the Business on Purpose platform, we've started a couple of other entities prior to it, so I had some experience coming in. One of them failed and dissolved completely. The other had somewhat of a hostile takeover, and so this is our first business to where we were kind of able to master plan on the front end. Now, we continue to create process as we go. In fact, each week we probably generate 1 to 2 new processes for our team, either written down or video captured. So video recording using something like Loom or ScreenFlow. And so we'll capture those even simplistic processes. We'll delegate them to our small little team, and we'll continue to roll with those processes until they're outdated, by which time we'll just do new process. So we came into this business with the systems mindset. Didn't mean we had it perfect, but it does mean that every single week, we actually as a team meet 4 times in a week. We have 3 daily huddles, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And then we have our once weekly team meeting. The daily huddles are about 10 minutes. The weekly team meeting is about 45 minutes to an hour. So we're always connected.
Well, great. And what sort of things do you talk about in those meetings?
The daily huddles are a little bit separate from the weekly team meeting. So I'll walk you through the agenda of both. The daily huddle, Robert, is very quick. We have our 12-week plan in front of us. Those are the only 3 goals within this 12 weeks that we're spending our energy and our time on. It's all we talk about. And so we'll get to the daily huddle, and we've got myself, Jonathan, Jesse, and Abby. Abby's in the Philippines, Jesse's in Georgia, Jonathan's in Florida, and I'm in South Carolina. And so we'll hop on the phone, and we won't even do big ones or anything. We'll just hop on the phone. Hey, guys, Jonathan, what's the biggest thing on your plate today, number 1? And then Jonathan will share with us so we can all hear what the biggest thing on his plate is. My second question is, what barriers can I remove to help you get that done? And then I'll come back and say, do you need anything from me? And then if I need anything from Jonathan, that's the point that I'll tell him. And then as soon as that's done, we move on to Abby. And then we move on to Jesse. And then we come around to me. Those meetings, as I mentioned, the daily huddles take no more than 8 to 10 minutes. And then at the end, we're like, all right, guys, see you tomorrow morning. And we jump off and we go about our day. So that happens Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And then for us, we've got an agenda on Friday morning at 9 a.m. for us that goes like this. We start with a story related to our mission and values. Now, I've already shared our mission with you to liberate small business owners from their chaos. But we've also got 5 unique core values. And so what we do is we glance back over the week and we identify a story, anybody, about a time where we were able to live out either our mission or one of our unique core values through our coaching. And we share that. So it's kind of an inspirational time, really short, just a couple of minutes. Then we move into big wins. And we do this every single week. It's fun. In fact, I start most of our meetings off with this. BIG. I think it was Dave, the strategic coach. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But he talked about BIG, begin in gratitude. So we go from mission and value story to a big win. And that's anything personal and professional over the past week. That's just been kind of a win for you. And, honestly, Robert, that's become a pretty special time because we've got some of our team members that'll share some pretty intimate things with us about their big win. And then once we've got that, we move into our accountability action items from last week. We want to make sure there's continuity from week to week. And so we look back at that. Then we move into our business discussion, which, again, centers around our 12-week plan. And then we wrap up going back to our action item sheet, making sure that we captured everything that needs to get done for next week. And then finally, any training of new processes that need to happen. That's when those get done for the last 5 to 8 minutes. So that meeting never lasts more than 1 hour, and we cap ourselves to it even if we're in the middle of a discussion. And that really keeps an airtight week so that we're constantly engaged, focused on the 3 primary goals every 12 weeks.
Super awesome. Well, that's a heck of an answer. A lot of stuff packed in there. And you mentioned the big win strategic coach. Are you thinking of Dan Sullivan?
That's exactly right, Dan Sullivan. So he's kind of the godfather of coaching, and I've read a couple of his periodicals. Even had some clients of ours who also went through strategic coach, and so they were kind enough to share with us some different things. And so that was one of the items I picked up on.
Super cool. Well, I love the structure. It has everything packed in, but also keeps things really, really simple. And I love that it's just those 3 goals. It's not some big hairy thing in those daily huddles, and that you just kind of go through with each person about what they have on their plate, what can you remove to help, and then do they need anything from you. And then you mentioned, so I mean, it's kind of circling back around to the big wins on that Friday 9 a.m. meeting. You have the big wins. So do you have, just to give us an idea, like, do you have any good examples of maybe like a big win you or your team have had recently?
Yeah, man. So you're putting me in the team member seat. I love it. So let me give you a big win. I'm in Nigeria right now, as I mentioned earlier, working with this heroic faith-based non-governmental. And so just today, this morning actually, what we did is we were able to lay out, because they're installing a school into their care center. They work with single and double orphans. And so they're installing a full-fledshed school, but they're taking the model from another school in another part of the country. And that's actually where we're at right now, is the other part of the country. And we've been meeting with those school leaders. And today we were able to lay out every single process that exists in that school within 4 major systems. And so the administrative system, the human resource system, the student system, and then the infrastructure system. And then we probably laid out, Robert, a good 30 or 40 different processes. And so now our team gets to go back to their home with all of these processes laid out. And within the next 8 months, they're going to be working to lay out those processes so they can build them there. So in other words, both sides got great clarity just today on how to launch this school within the next 8 months. So that was a huge win for us.
Super cool. It sounds like it. And so you mentioned a few times this idea of processes. So can you tell us like what a process is to you and what that would look like?
Sure. Yeah. The way we lay it out for every one of our heroic small business owners is we first want you, Robert, to think with what we call the systems mindset. And here's how that operates. So you come to me, for instance, you just asked me a question, big win. If I were to turn that back around on you, Robert, and go, hey, man, you know what? That's a powerful question to find the insight into some of the guests that you're talking to on a podcast. And you might be thinking with the systems mindset and go, wait a second, how do I document that segment of the podcast so that I remember to ask that question every single podcast and let our guests know it's only going to take 1 minute. I just want 60 seconds, but I'm going to ask you about a big win. That's what we call the systems mindset. The next time you go to do something, document it and record it like it's the last time you're ever going to do it. And so you might take that big win and go, man, that's a great idea. Let me create a script. And it's a loose script. I don't want it to be totally script, but let me create kind of a loose framework so that every time I talk to a guest on this podcast, I'm reminded to ask that one question. What's your big win? And so the next time you do it, the next guest you have on your podcast, you'll actually take out that loose framework, put in their big win, and then that'll remind you to ask them the next time. So we never want somebody to build a process just by sitting in a room thinking up a million processes and start writing them out. And so there's two primary ways you can write out a process. You can either open a document and just start writing. And we always start a process with what we call a trigger point. And so a trigger might be, for instance, if you're about to start your recruit guest for your podcast process, that would actually be a process for you, Robert, is what you would do is the trigger for that is I need guests. I'm running out of guests. And so that's going to trigger the recruit a guest process. And then you literally just want to walk step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's very elementary. And you think of every little nuance in that process so you don't skip anything. Make sure that they've got the Skype ID. Make sure that they've got your framework that you're going to walk through, the duration, the email, when it's going to come out, all of those things. And so you've got that documented either in written form, or you can use a technology I mentioned earlier, like a screen capture, screen flow, or something we use all the time called Use Loom, Loom, useloom.com. It's a powerful way to screen capture, but it's all up in the cloud, so you don't have to upload anything. And so we, again, probably do 1 to 2 Loom processes per week. The beauty about video capturing is everything you do on the computer, say for bookkeeping or data entry, all you have to do is the next time you do it, just click the record button and record everything you do. That way, everything will be captured in there. Does that make sense, Robert?
It does make sense, and you make it super simple. It's not some big crazy thing, but something that comes to mind here is if we keep on creating these processes, does it get to the point where it becomes unmanageable or it becomes like hard to find things? Is that a problem where like if these just get piled more and more on?
Yes, that is a problem. And so here's how we solve it. Is the problem, by the way, tells us that we're doing a great job of building process. So don't let the problem be something that stops us in our track. What the problem needs to do is trigger another process. And so it's an opportunity. So here's a couple of ways around that. Number one, go back to the weekly team meeting that I mentioned. Remember the very last thing that I mentioned in the weekly team meeting was training. Well, what do we train on? New processes. And so what you want to do is if you use Google Drive or if you use Dropbox, then you'll just want to create a simple folder system for all your processes. And so we use Google Drive. We run about 95% of our business off of that platform. And so we've got appropriately designed folders for each one of the groupings of processes that we have. And then when we get to that moment of training, we just go to our process folder and go, oh yeah, guys, by the way, we need a refresh on our client note follow-up process, which is a real process for us. And so we'll go back in there, and Abby, who runs that for us, may come back to me and say, hey, Scott, do you mind if we tweak this a little bit? And I'll be like, man, that sounds great. Yeah, fire away. Because she now owns the process instead of me owning that process.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can tell by listening to this that I'm on the right track because I have a couple people on my team, but I need to build it out more. And I've been using Google Drive and all the great stuff there so that way I can just have it there in the cloud, don't have to write it in a Word document on my desktop, don't have to upload it or any of that stuff. It's there. I can click and share it and get it on there. And yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. But one thing that I've noticed is as I'm building some of these processes is it's time consuming and I'm sometimes stuck and I'm thinking, well, should I devote more time to this, but that it feels like it's less time spent on the business, or should I just keep on like kind of chipping away at it and doing a little bit? And in that case, it feels like the processes aren't being built up very quickly. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Is it okay if this is a long haul type of situation?
Robert, let me ask you, and this is a really kind of you don't have to think much in response to this question, but if I give you $100 and told you within 12 months that $100 would return $3,000, would you take me up on it?
Of course, no brainer.
Yes, you'd want to know the catch. And so here's the catch. So Rory Vaden talks about the 30 times principle. So I want you to take this idea of process and delegation and run it through the 30 times principle. Let's take a 5-minute task. Robert, can you think about all the tasks that you do. What's one kind of 5-minute task per day that you do? One little thing that you're like, man, I'd love to get this off my plate.
Um,
Or even something that you used to do that you've already delegated.
I mean, I could say checking the help desk, replying to emails. Does that work?
Perfect. So yeah, absolutely. So let's take the help desk. That's actually a great example. So you and I could go round and round, and you could be like, Scott, but I have to be the one to look at the help desk. I have to be the one to look at that. And I'll push back on you as a coach. I'll gently kick you in the rear end and say, Robert, I'm going to challenge you on that. And so here's what I want to do. The next time you check the help desk, I want you to simply click record on your computer, either like one of those screen capture softwares I mentioned. Click record. And as you're checking the help desk, I want you to talk about your methodology. So you're literally doing your work. It's not taking you any extra time, but the only difference is you're talking it out as you're doing it. And then as soon as you're done, you're going to hit stop. And as long as you're using a cloud-based screen capture, you'll have that process right there. It is literally taking you no extra time. So now what we've done, Robert, is we've locked the excuse of I don't have enough time away in prison, right? Because you're going to do it anyway. And so we've recorded it, captured it. Now let's 30 times that investment of time. It's going to take, if you do a 5-minute task every day, it's going to cost you about 1,250 minutes per year, somewhere in that range. And you could do the math to get closer than that, but about 1,250 minutes per year. I forget how many hours that is. I know it's a lot. So let's say it's upward of 10 or 20 hours, something like that, every single year. In fact, it'd probably be good to do the math on that. So if we took 1,250 and we divided that 1,250 divided by 60, what we're going to get is 21 hours. Now, the average billable hour for a business owner like yourself is minimum of $200 per hour. And I know people gasp at that. And when I respond, I say, I know that's really low because most business owners are actually their time is actually worth more than that. So let's go 21 hours times $200 per hour. So for you to do that, it's going to cost your business $4,166 in a year. Let's take that same 1,250 minutes and let's multiply that by a really nice hourly rate of $25 an hour. And so when we do that, 1,250 minutes and divide that by the 21 hours, so we've got 21 hours times $25 per hour, we're at $525 per hour. When you process one 5-minute task, it turns into 1,250 minutes, 21 hours that saved you. That 5 minutes into the 1,250 minutes is a 733% return on your investment. You've roughly 30 or 40 or something like that times your investment. You've blown it out of proportion. And so what I tell heroic small business owners is you don't have time not to process out your business, because every time you do that 5-minute task of checking your help desk, it's costing you $4,166 per year, where it could only cost you $525. Now, you might say, well, Scott, I've got to see what's going on. Great. What you do is you have a great virtual assistant. You teach them your process, and all they do is ask you the questions only they can't answer and only you can answer. And there's a great Old Testament principle about this. I think it's Exodus 22 or something like that. Moses' father-in-law comes and tells him, what are you doing, man? And he says, well, I'm judging all these millions of people that I'm stuck with in the wilderness. And Jethro says, Moses, you've got to delegate into tens, fifties, hundreds, and thousands. You take the major issues and let them take the minor issues. So there's great historical precedent for delegating. But not only that, Robert, when you delegate, you actually add to the bottom line of your business.
That's pretty powerful stuff. And I have to admit that when I was first looking into or hearing about this delegating stuff, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I saw a lot of people doing it wrong or doing it at least in a way that was discouraging to me, because they were saying, oh, well, I just have all these people and they just do stuff for me and I just kind of sit back. And what made a lot more sense recently was to say, well, I have my team doing the things that aren't important, but then in addition to that, I also put my own time into the business. So that way it's like it's just growing and growing, leveraging, multiplying, whatever buzzword you want to use.
You got it. You got it. That's exactly right, man. You got it. Well done.
Awesome, thank you. I feel like a teacher's pet, a star student here, and I think that so yeah, there are lots of little calculations there, but that makes a lot of sense. Where it's like it's easy to say, oh, it's just 5 minutes, it's just a little bit of time, but if that adds up so much over time, and that's so much money that we our own time has value. So that's all money that we could have just spent on someone, some virtual assistant overseas or working for a lot less money, and then us as the business owner can do the business owner tasks for a lot more money. So this is all really great, and this is all making sense. And as we begin to wind down here, do you see any mistakes creep in when people begin to implement your training, your systems here? Like, is there just like a number one problem where a lot of people go wrong that you just wish that you could give us a heads up about ahead of time?
Yes. I'm going to give you two foundational principles we get everybody before they come into the program, and we vet very, very heavily. The number one thing is you have to be willing to do everything that we ask you to do. Number two, you got to have more money coming in than's going out. If you're willing to do both of those things, then what we tell you is the march is uphill, your thighs are going to burn, you're going to breathe heavy, and you're going to sweat a lot. The number one issue, Robert, that we run up against when there's a failure in the take of the 4 Steps program with the heroic small business owner is not the program, it's the lack of implementation. Because here's the reality, guys. We could Google a lot of really great ideas, a lot of really great coaching stuff. You can find a lot of tutorials online on structure, process building, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is if they don't get implemented, all they are is shiny tools sitting in a toolbox, never being used. And so the number one hiccup, hurdle, struggle that a heroic small business owner is going to have when they get into this stream and process is simply a lack of implementation. And I know it sounds like, that's never me. Man, I've seen some of the best of them. And they get into it and they just kind of like, man, it's just too much. It's too much. So what we tell people is if you're willing to spend 2 to 4 hours per week working on your business, give it about 6 to 12 months, and you're going to have a business that you now work on and you own instead of that business owning you.
Super cool. I love it. Sounds like freedom to me. And that little bit there about, do everything that's told to you. I mean, I can completely relate, and sometimes I'm bad at that, but I see other people doing it as well, in that they pay a coach, or they take a course, or they do whatever, and they learn all these things, but then they disagree with this and they say, I won't do that. And at a certain point, it's like, well, then what the heck are you paying that coach for if you're not willing to actually follow them, or you're going to pick and choose what you want to do? So, I mean, great lesson, makes perfect sense. And so final question here is, as far as like life lessons go, if you could send a message back in time to yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even further, is there anything that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Yeah, easy. I'd go back to this great quote. Again, it's an old Jewish prophet. He said, he was told, write the vision down so that those who read it may run. Write the vision down so that those who read it may run. 20 years ago, I would have taken pen to paper and I would have written down the vision that I saw. It's one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I know it could sound ethereal and out there and all that, but if I were to go back 20 years ago, like you asked, that's what I would do. I would have written my vision down so that I could have run a lot sooner than I'm running now. But man, we're running now. And at the time of this recording, it's a Monday, and Monday's my favorite day of the week because we finally got our vision down.
Super cool. No one has it 100% figured out, but it sounds like you have quite a bit of this business, this life stuff figured out. And I'm sure a lot of people's interest, curiosity is piqued here because they heard about all this great advice that you shared, and you shared a lot of details. And I love how you broke down how the weekly meeting goes, how the daily huddle goes, how you document stuff, even just making it really simple just by doing that quick screen recording, all kinds of amazing stuff. So if people are listening, they might be saying, well, who the heck is this Scott Beebe guy? I want to check him out. I want to find out about his business. So can you share some links with us?
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much. It's a lot of work to put on a podcast, and the fact that you would share the stage is really humbling. So first, thank you. There's two outlets that I'll give you. Number one is the Business on Purpose podcast. So you've got Robert's on your phone, on your podcast app. Go get the Business on Purpose podcast. What we do is daily coaching. So 3 to 5 times a week, we upload short 4 to 9 minute segments. I get out of a small business owner conference room. I immediately turn the recorder on, and I tell you exactly what happened and exactly what the outcome was. So it's like you're in the conference room with us, and you can take that out and chew it on. So Business on Purpose podcast. The second place, this is for the heroic small business owners who want to take action right now. We don't mess around. We put our money where our mouth is. If you go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, what we've done is we've taken our entire vision tutorial, unencumbered, no strings attached, including our vision story template that you can follow with the 7 categories to draw out, again, 2 to 6 pages of detail for you to draw out. If you're willing to invest 2 hours of your time, if you're not, please don't go download this. But if you are, go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, and you can go spend time actually writing down your vision story right now. We don't do gimmicks. We don't embed it within the 6th email follow-up or any of that kind of stuff. We give it to you right away. Put your email in there, and it'll pop up right away, and you can go start working on your vision story for your business right now.
Super cool. So once again, just to make sure everyone has those links, mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision to go and do that exercise, and then the Business on Purpose podcast to get that daily coaching. So, I mean, yeah, this has been a super great conversation here, Scott. And as I alluded to a little bit, I myself am working on systematizing some of the podcasting stuff at first, just to dip my toe in the water, just to slowly remove myself in the business, because it has in a lot of ways become unmanageable. There's a lot of chaos, and it's got to the point where things need to change. And I'm sure that a lot of other people listening can relate. Maybe they have a team that's not working, or maybe they're in the transition process as well, or maybe they haven't even started and they say, oh geez, I really need to be getting my eye on the ball for these things, so that way I don't have to have 5, 10, 15 more years of just the breakneck rat race pace. And so thanks a bunch for stopping by and for setting us straight and for telling us what we need to do, not just in theory, but from a guy who's lived it. And not only that, but you make it simple to understand, and the way that you create these processes, it makes it, the way that you explained it here, sounds like it ends up being something super simple for our own businesses as well. So I really appreciate you being honest and deep with us and vulnerable and all that kind of fun stuff. So everyone should go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, and we'll see you there. And thanks so much, Scott, for stopping by and for being a great guy, wonderful teacher, and everything.
Robert, thanks for what you're building, man.
Subscribe to us right now while it's still fresh on your mind at marketeroftheday.com/iTunes.